Hey guys, Zach with Zach's GT Garage, and today I'm going to show you how to remove the door panel and also replace the window regulator in these 1991 through 1996 Ford Escorts. Either it be the LX or the GT, it does not matter. Even if it's a 2-door or 4-door, it doesn't matter. It'll be the same process. So let's get started. So here's the tools that you'll be needing. I'll put a link in the description of the tools, and you'll need this window crank remover tool. You'll also need this door panel removal tool or trim panel tool, sockets, Phillips screwdriver, and your choice of either electric ratchet or a normal ratchet. So let's go ahead by opening up the door. Okay, so now getting the window crank handle off, you'll use this tool to remove it. And what you'll do is when you slide it in, it has a like a U-clip that you will release. And what you want to do is kind of cover it with your hand, just like this. So that way it doesn't fly out and go anywhere, because just like a 10mm, it'll fly out and you'll lose it forever. So just keep just lightly knocking it and cover it with your palm like so, and then that way it should be able to fall in your lap, or you'll be able to catch it and put your other hand underneath it and catch it so you don't lose it. This is what it looks like. Be very careful it does not get lost. And then that way, now that clips off, your window crank handle will be able to come right off. Now with the crank handle off, the U-clip just slides into a groove behind the gear right there. And let me show you how it looks when we put the clip back in on the crank handle. So once it's fully in like that, that's what it'll look like. It'll have those little two curves to lock it into the groove behind the gear. So that way it cannot come back out. And here's that groove right behind the gear I was talking about where the U-clip locks in place. Okay, so now we're going to take our Phillips screwdriver, and there's 3 Phillips screws that you want to get. On the armrest, there's one, and there's the other, and then there's another Phillips screw at the door handle right there. So let's go ahead and remove all 3 of those. Okay, now we got to get the screws out. So what you want to do is just kind of lightly tap them out of the armrest just to kind of bounce them out, just like so. There we go. Then get the other one, just kind of tap it to bounce it all the way out. Okay, here's where we want to get the trim panel removal tool. So there are clips throughout the door panel here, and what you want to do is locate where they're at. You'll be able to see them in between the door and the door panel, and just kind of pop one off and follow it around to make sure that you get them all off. If you pull them by hand, you're going to risk either tearing or breaking the door panel, or breaking something like the retainer clips. And just make sure you're taking your time, making sure you're getting all the retainer clips loose from the door. Don't try and rush it or anything. You just want to take your time to make sure that you're not going to damage anything or a retainer clip, because then again, this car is 31 years old. And I'm sure you can find retaining clips new, but if you happen to tear or break the door panel, then your best luck is finding one in the junkyard, because you can't get them new, or unless you know somebody that also has a spare one. So just be careful. So now that the door panel is loose, let's go ahead and take off the mirror cover right here. So that way we can remove the door panel a whole lot easier. And when you take this off, just lightly kind of pull towards you, so that way you don't break it. So right here, it's all one piece. So if you try to pry and take it off at a certain or any angle besides straight out, you're gonna bust it right off. Okay, go ahead and double check, make sure it's loose, and now we're going to remove the door handle right here. Now there's 2 ways of doing it. So if you pull the handle forward, you can get a flathead screwdriver and get the little arm off the handle. Or an easier way I found, you got to be really careful with this, is when you go to remove the door panel, you're going to kind of remove it, and with your other hand, you're going to kind of turn the door handle just enough to get it through the little square slot of the door panel. So that way you can free the door panel completely loose off the car. So just be really careful, just slightly bend it enough, that way it can get the door panel loose. Then go ahead and just set the door panel aside. So when you remove the door panel, some of the clips might come out of the door panel. That's what they look like. So be sure to check the back of your door panel and make sure all your clips are good and they're not broken or missing. Because if you have a few missing, then your door panel is going to kind of rattle against the door when you're driving, and it's just going to be really irritating to listen to. So just kind of go around and make sure all your clips are good, and then you'll notice where one should be. So just right up here, you can see it's missing right there. So you just put it in the hole, and then you just slide it to the left to lock it in place, and it's all good to go. And we'll just set it off to the side out of the way, just right here. Now with the door panel away, we can go ahead and see the inside and the skin of the door. And here's where you want to just check to make sure it looks good, and if anything needs cleaned up, you can go ahead and clean it up. In my case here, the window keeps shifting forward and back, which is why it's really difficult to roll down and basically right impossible to roll back up. Even if you have your hand above like this and pull up as you're trying to pull up on the window while cranking it up to close the window, and it's just really difficult to do. Now we're going to remove the window, and all you need is a 10mm socket, and go ahead and unbolt those 2 bolts that separates the window regulator and the window itself. Now the bolts of that are out of the way, you can get a really good look at the clip that holds the window to the regulator where the bolts go through to hold the window to the regulator so it can roll up and down. So now you're going to be taking the window out, and you want to kind of lift it at sort of an angle to get it out, and you want to be really careful and watch really what you're doing while you're taking out of the track. And also once you have it out of the door, have a really good grip on it so that way you don't accidentally drop it and break it. And then you can just set off to the side on some towels like I did here. So here's a better look inside without the window in the door of the track that the window goes into and slides up and down on. And on this side, I apologize, it's kind of dark and difficult to see. But down in there is the other side of the track. Even with the window out, you can hear what awful noise my window regulator was making. Glad that wasn't annoying. Anyway, we're going to unbolt the regulator from the door. That's a 10mm right here on the bottom of the track, and on top of the track are these 2 10mm nuts that are holding it on the top. And then over here, you have 3 nuts that you're going to remove to unbolt the crank mechanism from the door. So now you're going to want to remove this plastic away from the door so that way you can get to the other 3 bolts to remove the crank mechanism from the door. Now that it's all unbolted, we can go ahead and remove it and pull it out of the door. And here's how the window regulator looks once it's out of the car. And in the box on the left over here is where our better used window regulator is that we'll be putting in today. So here's what the newer regulator looks like. They also sent me an extra crank handle with the U-clip, which is very handy to have as an extra. And then they also included all the bolts, including extra clips for the window with the bolts in them. So those will be really handy to have as extras as well. So now we're going to go ahead and put the better regulator inside the door now. And these regulators are pretty sharp on the side. I've learned the hard way. So if you can, get some gloves that won't allow you to get metal paper cuts, because they hurt. The window regulator tracks are what is sharp on the sides, and you may not even feel it like I did, and you might just end up getting a metal paper cut, as I call it. And trust me, they are not fun. So when you're putting the track back in, you want to make sure that it's dead center with the bolts, and then you just kind of finger tight it until you have everything in place, and then you can go back and tighten everything else to lock it in place. Now, before you go through the trouble of putting the window in, make sure the track is properly lubricated or greased, and just kind of roll it up and down without the window just to make sure everything works properly before you go to all the trouble of putting everything back together. And now with the regulator in, let's go ahead and just make sure the channels for the window are nice and clean and they're free of debris, because that can also get caught on the window and cause the window be hard to roll down or up. But just go ahead and check everything over and make sure everything looks good. And I would suggest go ahead and clean the channels, get some like WD-40, a worn out toothbrush, and just clean the channels really well. So let's go ahead now and put the window back in. Remember that angle that you had when you pulled it out. Go ahead with that same angle to put it back in, so that way you can get it into both window channels. Take your time, make sure it's not getting caught on anything. Make sure those clips aren't getting caught on like the cable of the window regulator. And just take your time, make sure that's in the window channels, and don't try and force anything in because you'll break the glass. So just make sure everything fits nice and tight. You can even raise it with your hands up and down a few times. Make sure it's securely in the window before you bolt it to the regulator. So now come on the other side and roll it with your hands up and down a few times if you need to make sure everything is still where it needs to be, the windows and the window channels. And then this way you can kind of eye and see, line up the window clips on the window with the regulator and make sure it's sitting on both nice and tight. As you can see here, you want to make sure the bottom of the window clip is holding and has a good grip locked on the window. And then I'll go ahead and bring the camera over here, and you can get a good look of the top of the clip. It's on the window regulator itself, and then you can just go ahead and put those bolts right through the little clip there. Now you may have to fiddle with it for a little bit to get everything aligned, but once you do, go ahead and roll the window up and down to make sure it's not moving forward or backwards, and make sure everything was working properly. Now I took the speaker out so that way you can get a good look of what the window looks like in the window channel to make sure everything looks good. And after everything looks good, let's go ahead and put the speaker back in and get the rest of the door put back together with the door panel, and we'll be done with this. Now when you're putting it back together, you want to make sure you put the plastic right in the same area as it goes, if not the exact location of it goes, because this plastic prevents moisture from damaging the door cards or the door panels. And if it's damaged like mine is here, then just do the best you can on putting it back together. If you want, you can even get like painter's tape or any kind of tape and just kind of tape it up. So now let's go ahead and put the door panel back on. Again, just make sure everything is going to clip right into place, especially with those retaining clips. You want to be careful and not break those. And then here's a better view of where those clips are going to go. You can see the hole right there on the side, and just kind of just tap it into place and they'll just lock right back in the door there. And just make sure you go all around, make sure you got the clips all the way pushed in, so that way you don't have the door panel be rattling on you. And then go ahead and put the Phillips screw back in the door handle there. That way it's nice and tight, giggity, and you won't have trouble opening up your door. So now go ahead and get those long Phillips screws and put them in between the door handle so that way you can screw it back in. And then those screws actually go from door handle to the door. So when you're screwing it in, you're actually screwing it into the door, not just the door panel. Now we're going to go ahead and put the window crank handle back on. So just like in the beginning of the video, you just want that U-clip just right in place of the crank handle, so that way it locks in the groove just behind the gears of the window crank mechanism. So that's the way it's supposed to look. And then all you got to do is go ahead and click it in, and then you can give it a good smack with your palm to make sure it's in there and locked in tight. Just like that, just give it a light smack to make sure it is 100% in that groove, so that way when you try and pull on it, it's not going to come off when you try to crank the window up or down. And then go over everything, roll the window up and down with everything installed, and make sure everything works the way it does. Everything worked really good to me. Now, for the last thing, you want to make sure you put the mirror cover back on. So remember how you had it when you pulled it off, and you're just going to slide that prong right into the hole of the door, so that way it locks in place there. And just go ahead and tap it in, but don't hit it hard like I did to make sure it's in place. That's how you're actually going to break it. All right, all done. Everything looks good. Now all you gotta do is put your tools away and shut the door. Thanks guys for watching. Go ahead and like and subscribe if you'd like, if the video helped you out, and we'll see you next time.